Support for this episode of Judaism Unbound comes from the Oshman Family JCC in Palo Alto, California, whose vision is to be the architects of the Jewish future. The Oshman Family JCC empowers you to experience Jewish paths toward a life of joy, purpose, and meaning through innovative Jewish learning and wellness programs, community building, and initiatives to develop the next generation of Jewish leaders. Learn more at www.paloaltojcc.org. This is Judaism Unbound, episode 367, Let My People Sing. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Dan Liebenson.
And I'm Lex Rofberg.
And today, as we go on with our spirituality series, we're going to be talking about communal music making. There are other kinds of activities that can give people spiritual experiences, like prayer, of course, or learning, as we'll talk about in future episodes. But I think it's fair to say that meditation and song are two of the ones that people really say, yeah, that's part of the toolbox of spirituality. So we're excited today to talk to three people from an organization called Let My People Sing. Now, Let My People Sing was founded by two of our guests today, Margot Siegel and Batya Levine, as well as Ilana Lerman, Noam Lerman, and Monica Gomery. Let My People Sing is a cultural project expanding the ancient and transformative practice of Jewish communal singing. Let My People Sing very much focuses on the gathering of a multiracial, multicultural, and genderful Jewish community that uplifts songs and leaders historically and ongoingly pushed to the margins. Together, they say, we transmit and reclaim diasporic Jewish singing traditions, celebrate original music emerging from our communities, and create heart-centered gatherings where we can all be leaders and learners of song. Let My People Sing envisions a more liberated world, overflowing with song and prayer in which Jewish communities are resourced by our musical traditions. Communities where the interdependence we practice when singing together is woven into the ways we care for each other, share resources, build a more liberated world, and deepen our connection to ourselves and the divine. Let My People Sing brings together traditions across Jewish time and space, from ancient to contemporary music and everything in between. The project includes restoring lost or broken lineages of cultural transmission and simultaneously elevating, celebrating, learning, and teaching the incredible new music coming out of our communities. Our guests today are Margot Siegel, Batya Levine, and Anthony Russell. As I mentioned earlier, Margot Siegel and Batya Levine are among the 5 co-founders of Let My People Sing, and Anthony Russell is a member of the Let My People Sing Advisory Circle. A few words of introduction of our guests. Margot Siegel is the Director of Organizational Change at Let My People Sing. They are a community builder, cultural organizer, and music maker who believes a vibrant queer Jewish diasporist future is both here and on its way. Batya Levine is Director of Programs at Let My People Sing. Batya Levine uses song as a tool for cultivating healing and resilience in their work as a communal song leader, musician, shaliach tzibur, a Jewish prayer leader, and cultural organizer. They offer song, ritual, and workshops in a variety of communities, and they compose original music made of Ashkenazi yearning, queer heart medicine, and emunah, which is faith or trust. Batya Levine released their first album, Karov, with Rising Song Records in 2020. And our third guest is Anthony Russell. He is a vocalist, composer, and arranger specializing in music in the Yiddish language. His work with the klezmer trio Varetsky Pass resulted in Convergence, an exploration of a century of African-American and Ashkenazi Jewish music. Anthony Russell has also been a culture essayist in a number of publications, including The Forward, Tablet Magazine, the Jewish Telegraphic Agency, Protocols, Full Stop Magazine, Ayin Press, and Jewish Currents. We are so excited to jump into this conversation about singing as a form of spirituality or as part of the spirituality toolbox. So Margot Siegel, Batya Levine, Anthony Russell, welcome to Judaism Unbound. It's so great to have you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for having us.
Well, when I heard the name of your organization, Let My People Sing, I can't be the only one to say, well, that, of course, calls to mind, let my people go, that Moses said to Pharaoh. And my question is, who is not letting your people sing? Why did this organization have to be created? What was it fighting against?
That is such a good question. I think
It's not a good idea to consider it in terms of villainy, but rather to identify singing as a force of liberation.
Yeah, I think for me, the first thing that comes to mind is assimilation. And I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago and attended a synagogue, but didn't feel very spiritually connected. And coming back to Judaism in my early 20s, I was really brought into this like broader singing culture. It just really like awoke my desire to sing in community, to sing with other Jews. And so I think like to me, the villain in the story is like Christian hegemony and assimilation, and also like a white supremacist culture that for those of us who are white want us to conform to like white Gentile culture. And yeah, I think for myself, that's like what made it so that I didn't grow up in like a vibrant Jewish singing culture.
Can you get us into the post-liberation, like what actually happens in Let My People Sing gatherings, and what does a Jewish singing culture mean in practical terms?
I think for me, what it means is that the primary form of Jewish expression that happens in spaces in which Let My People Sing happens to exist is that of singing. Singing is the primary Jewish expression that happens in those spaces. And I think it's a very different way of expressing oneself than other Jewish spaces, even in spaces where ostensibly one would sing, like a synagogue. When singing is the primary form of expression, it allows for community to be made much more quickly than I think it would be otherwise.
At this point in Let My People Sing's lifespan, what it looks like is people gathering for a 4-day retreat from Thursday to Sunday, and Shabbat is really the center piece of it. And it's filled with people trying out leading songs, trying out learning songs, participant-led workshops, and incredible lead teachers who are people whose music we want to center and uplift. It looks like people coming and filling up their cup with songs to take back with them to their communities. It looks like people meeting each other and folks with shared identity having space to be together and sing together and do cultural reclamation work together. And it looks like a lot of joy, a lot of space for a wide range of emotions and prayer and song and healing.
I'm just thinking of one moment, I think it was in the last retreat we ran, summer 2019, and just walking around as different workshops were happening, and some of them inside with windows open, some of them outside, and just being able to like walk around the Isabel Friedman campus and just hearing these like ancient melodies, new melodies coming out of our community, and just hearing it all in one space and getting to be like walk through this bath of Jewish song. And I think a big part of Let My People Sing and the spaces we've created is really like singing the songs of our ancestors and also like feeling our ancestors present with us. It just feels really palpable that that's like what's happening. Just feels like such a powerful practice to like take that and bring that into the present, and to do it that's like centering queer folks and Jews of color and Mizrahi and Sephardi Jews. Something we say a lot at our gatherings is that at Let My People Sing, everyone is a leader and learner of song. And that's a big part of our values, that somebody can come to the gathering who's never led a song before and who we, over the time of the retreat, like support to try out leading a song. And those have been some of the most powerful songs that have been taught at retreats, is the one who, you know, the people who have never led a song in their lives and try it for the first time. And then often those people go on to continue to lead songs and become song leaders in their communities. And that to us is like the essence of what Let My People Sing is here to do.
What our vision is that almost there are no quote unquote song leaders in the end, is that we are actually just all collectively holding song, and someone can guide in a moment and we can pick it up together. And, you know, of course, song leading is a beautiful practice, and there is some vision that we can be collectively holding it in such an abundantly leaderful and learnerful way.
One of the first things that I experienced when I went to that retreat in 2019 was coming into a room where everyone was on the same level and they were all singing the same melody. And some people knew it really well, and some people were just learning it. And it was like stepping into a warm bath of song. It was just this really beautiful feeling where I was like, this is something that I know that I want to become a part of, because I could see and I could hear and I could experience community being made in a form of like radical equality, right? Everyone was singing together. Everyone was singing with what they had, but there wasn't really like a hierarchy. And that was just such a beautiful, and for me, such a profound thing. For me, as a professional performer, as a professional vocalist, I have a lot of very complicated feelings and sometimes anguish around the act of singing and its relationship to people, its relationship to Jews who are either listening to me or maybe trying to figure out whether I belong in the space or I don't, based purely on what sounds are coming out of my mouth. That was not an experience that I had at Let My People Sing. It was just this place where I was able to exist as a voice among so many other voices, as opposed to feeling like I in some way lost myself. I really found an aspect of myself, just how much joy I could experience singing with other people. That being the reason why we're there, and that actually being a profound reason. It's not like, we were a bunch of Von Trapp children singing Do Re Mi in the Alps, but it's really hard to get to a point where you're just having that kind of joyful experience in hierarchical and mainstream American Jewish spaces, because there's so much sort of, people are there for a purpose, and something needs, things need to get done, and we're here to get things done. Even when you're there to pray, the idea is that you are there to pray. You are getting the service done. Here, we're really exploring what the terrain of community could be if it was based purely on the voice. It was based on song, on sound. It still feels like super radical. It's a taste of the world to come,
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So what I'm hearing a little bit here, and correct any part of this that doesn't feel true to y'all's approach. What I'm hearing a little bit is, when one goes to synagogue, like a question that a listener could have, right, is, okay, you're talking about people like singing together in a room. Like I've been to places where people sing in a room. Like I could see somebody listening and being like, I'm a little confused. Like, help me understand what the difference is. Mm-hmm. And if I'm understanding what you've said so far correctly, song in a synagogue context on a Friday night or Saturday morning, like people are there where song is the means that you're utilizing to do something else, which is like pray to God, right? And by the way, not that everybody in synagogue actually is there primarily to pray to God. I think that lots of Jews are not. But what you're describing with a project that's called Let My People Sing is that song isn't the means to an end. It's not the genre by which one is praying. That's the end in and of itself, is to sing collectively. And so I want to make sure that that's right. But B, I want to ask, and this hints a little bit to what Anthony was talking about, but all of you, song is a complicated word. And we recently spoke to Shefa Gold, who I know is one of your teachers, and she specifically said, that she avoids the word song and she uses the word chant instead. And I'm not saying that y'all are like opposed in different schools of collective singing. No, I actually think that you are deeply aligned. And so I want to get at how you mean song, because my suspicion is that it's not the form of quote unquote song that she's trying to avoid.
I'll try to speak to your first question. I think the goal is communal singing for the sake of like healing and liberation. And we find singing as like a super powerful and potent tool to do that. And we love doing it, and it brings us so much joy. And there's like a bigger vision that we're holding of what's possible when we do that together. And in terms of the question, why song? I think I'm just like, well, when I sing, like I feel really whole and I feel really connected to other humans. Not many other things do that so easily for me. Song just feels like such a portal to access that feeling of wholeness and connection collectively in a way that I don't experience really anything else doing. And maybe that's because I'm not a dancer, and for other people that might be dance, and totally respect that. And for me, it's through singing. And I think there's just something of like harmonies. And when you have 200 people in a room, gorgeous harmonies, there's just like, I think something that happens to our system.
Well, it just so happens we're going to be interviewing Let My People Dance next week. So
Oh, perfect. Tell them we say hi.
they're going to have to be founded between this week and next week if we're
I'm
going to
sure
do
somebody
that.
can make it happen.
I'm down. Let's do it. The older I get, the less I'm concerned with actually what the difference is between these concepts of song or performance or prayer. I think in the beginning I was very concerned because I arrived to Judaism as a professional performer, and I did not leave that aspect of myself outside of the synagogue doors, which means that when I first started coming to synagogue, people would turn around and they would be like, first they'd be like, "Are you from Israel? Are you an Ethiopian Jew?" And I'm like, no, I am from Texas. I'm sorry." And they're like, "So how do you know this pronunciation and the melodies?" And I said, I was like an opera singer for 20 years. Singing in a foreign language and sounding like I speak that language idiomatically and learning melodies really quickly, that is literally my job, which means that I can sit down in one service and pretty much learn the tunes and then come back and sing them like I've known them my entire life. And yet, in a Jewish context, I've oftentimes encountered this sort of anxiety around song and performance and prayer and like whether, that was a performance or whether that was actually a prayer. And speaking as someone who identifies primarily as a performer, I think the difference is overstated in that even the most authentic musical utterances contain aesthetic choices that are intrinsic to the formation of what we would call a performance. And I don't think that this is like a bad thing. You'll notice that the word bima also means stage in modern Hebrew. And I think that there's an element of performance in music that is sung in a synagogue. The issue lies in the purpose, in the kavona, in the intention of what you're singing, of what you're performing, the purpose for which the piece of music has been created. And what that creates in the people who sing it and hear it is emes, is truth. I think that there's different kinds of music that could be, put under the rubric of song. Sheffer Gold is an exemplary example of chant. So, that's like a very specific kind of singing on a technical level. Like a chant is different than other genres in that the melodic material involved is very brief and direct in its purpose, iterating itself as the point of focus for people who are singing it. A chant is a kind of shvisi. It's an auditory and vocal focusing of that extension of the soul, which we call the voice. In Martin Buber's collection of Hasidic sayings, it says, when one is singing and cannot lift their voice, and another comes and sings with them, another who can lift their voice, the first will be able to lift their voice too, and that is the secret of the bond between spirits. The reason why two people singing together is the secret of the bond between spirits is because in some way the voice is an extension, is an externalization of the spirit. Okay, that got very mystical. I wasn't necessarily planning on going there, but and I'm not exactly sure how that necessarily answers your question, except for the fact that intention, kavona, is really what separates a performance from a song or the utterance of the soul from any other kind of sort of musical performance. I think that's the difference. I think that's the difference for anything. If somebody gets up and gives a sermon in shul, the difference between that actually being words of Torah and being merely an academic lecture is intention. It's kavona.
There's some way in which people like me who know very little about music have an understanding that when people are singing, often, whether people are singing together or even watching a performance by a great singer, something happens where there is some transcendence of self. And we've been talking in this series on spirituality that maybe the goal of spirituality really is about this yearning to connect to something beyond oneself. And by that, I don't mean God. It could just be another person. It could be your family. It could be your community. And it could be the stuff of the stars and even God, but we don't have to go that far. actually just to say, no, there is something transcendent in simply the connection with the other people in this room, where it's not me as myself connecting with these other people. There's something actually where I'm no longer myself. And maybe that changes me forever. And I'm wondering if, having done this, I mean, I'm theorizing about it, having done this practically, can you talk about the way in which singing together really functions in terms of the spiritual experience of people, and not only of Jews? I'm wondering if we understand that singing actually works, like it's actually a technology that works to do this job that we're all yearning to do, then why don't we do it more?
Dan, Chavarol, you're asking like the question, like if singing works and it is this amazing resource that we have for creating community, why aren't we doing it all of the time? Hello, like, I mean, that's it.
Well, one thing I want to say is that singing is an incredibly vulnerable act. You are quite literally producing sound from within your body. Like you are the instrument, and your breath and vocal cords are serving for you to express yourself. So many people have been shamed about singing. Oh, my music teacher told me to mouth the words when I was little. Like growing up, my family would like make fun of me for singing out loud in like a teasy way. And the pressure for it to be a perfect performance in our society has really created a lot of obstacles for people to actually sing, which I think speaks to part of why don't we do it all the time? I think it's actually quite vulnerable and hard. Speaking to that quote of when one person is singing and a second person joins them, that makes the first person stronger and more able to sing. That is part of the answer to what is happening. The more voices we put into this collective larger voice, the voice of the kahal, the voice of the prayerful congregation, the collection of people who are there with intention to sing together, the wider the capacity for people to bring themselves, to feel the bigness of what we're all a part of in that moment. This energetic container that is built, and the more people are in it, the wider the capacity to hold experience within that. Also, singing literally vibrates our bodies. So there is this physical resonance that is happening both inside of our bodies and all around us, that we are quite literally being reconfigured.
There's something alchemical that happens when voices are brought together in song. There's like some essential element of the ego that has to be necessarily submerged in the act of simultaneously making sound with other people. And I think that this opens up the self to possibilities of human attunement or at-one-ment, if you will.
Hey.
That lends itself to spiritual fulfillment and reflection. How it's iterated by Let My People Sing is that the community creates a climate in which the act of singing is divested of the kind of associations that I think discourage people from wanting to sing, the kind of associations that elsewhere undermine the status of singing as an essential act of Jewish expression. Let My People Sing. Singing is the primary mode of Jewish expression and community building. And your ability to do those things, your ability to function as a Jew, is enabled through lifting your voice with other people. Something that I think a lot of people don't really think about or realize is that singing also requires listening, which is literally the watchword of our people, Shema Yisrael. Active listening to the point to where what is heard is actually internalized. A lack of regard for singing actually means a lack of regard for one of the most fundamental forms of interactions with others, and of course the divine. It's this really important thing, and it gets extremely short shrift in other Jewish communal spaces, and I've never really understood that.
I in college had two core communities that were deeply important, both of which related deeply to singing. One was Hillel, my Jewish life on campus, and one was my a cappella group that I was in. And I had an experience multiple times, but the first time it happened where I went to Friday night services, very, very songful, the one that I went to. And then we had a concert in my a cappella group. My a cappella group was not Jewish, but I went to services, we sang together, and then I had this concert directly afterwards. And I realized while I was in the concert, like, nothing about this feels different to my body. My body cannot tell that one of these is theoretically religious and the other is not. And that has always sat with me. But the question I have, it gets back to the practical. I'm curious, what does it look like to actually craft this retreat, to choose melodies that honor different forms of Jewish background? What does it look like to balance melodies that have no words at all with melodies that have very carefully chosen words? Like, is there like a methodology to how your gatherings turn out and like the songs that are sung? Or is it really, we could choose any song on the planet and do it in a particular way and it will work?
Yeah, I think I have two answers to that question. One is that we're mostly not choosing the songs. We choose very few songs. Usually we choose one song, which is the thread nigun, which is the wordless melody we are going to kind of thread throughout the gathering. The songs are chosen by the prayer leaders, by the lead teachers, by the people leading workshops, and even at the community sings, the beginning of the community sings usually, that's led by one of our core team members, and we'll start that off. But then from there, it's community members that are choosing what songs to sing, and we have really built a culture of wanting to uplift queer and trans folks, Jews of color, Sephardi Mizrahi Jews, women, people who have been pushed to the margins of our community historically and ongoingly. And so when we do our community sings, which we usually have one a day, and those are spaces where we're coming together in a big group and people are offering and teaching songs. The one thing is, especially when it's a song that's going to be taught in that kind of space, we encourage people for it to be fairly simple so that people can teach it in a call and response way. But there'll be workshops where someone chooses one song. I think it was Yosef Goldman led a workshop a few years ago. He chose one song, and that's all that was learned through that workshop. And that was super powerful because it was a complex song. I think it was a Yedid Nefesh tune, and people really learned it. So I don't think there's like a wrong or right song. I think it's more about who is leading the songs and how are we really like transforming the history of only men being allowed to sing. How are we turning that on its head?
Can you just explain the connection a little bit with the whole idea that we've been talking about in terms of the power of song and what you just said about really centering Jews of color, queer folks, Sephardi, Mizrahi? Are those just two separate values of Let My People Sing? And there could be a Let My People Sing that was just about singing, and it wasn't necessarily about centering the experiences of these particular groups? Or is there a way in which you find the connection between those two profoundly critical to the task at hand here?
Maybe I'll answer that question by just doing a little bit of history of like where we came from. So Let My People Sing started in 2015 and came out of inspiration. I went to a youth traditional song retreat, and it was like a weekend of singing. I was like, wait a second, Bhagia, like, why don't we do the Jewish version of this? Like, so we reached out to friends, and Alana Lerman and Noam Lerman and Monica Gomery said yes to joining us and co-creating the first singing retreat. And from the start, that was a central part. It was really about whose voices are in the room and whose voices are being centered. And I think for us, those can't be separate, because if we just had a retreat that was just Jewish communal singing, that would replicate all of the patterns that are alive in our community, which is the like cis straight white man is like taking up the most space. That didn't feel like the kind of Jewish liberatory singing space we wanted to be a part of creating.
Let My People Sing is a cross section of a wide array of the Jewish community, and it's not a queer only space or a JOC only space. It's part of the point of it is that it's one of the few spaces that I've been in that feels really liberatory and centering of liberatory politics while being actually desiring a lot of different people. And part of this whole vision is to uplift multiplicity and wide diasporic jewels of our tradition. Jewish music is so wide and beautiful. And for myself, growing up modern Orthodox, I was like, I know all of the songs. I know all of the Jewish songs. And then I went like a little bit outside of my community and oh my God, there's so many more songs. And there is something that about the cross-pollination there and how we can be in the project of learning each other's songs within the wider Jewish community, both to support each other and because it's beautiful. It is breathes spaciousness and life into the fullness of what Jewish music, Jewish singing, Jewish culture is.
For me, Let My People Sing exists as a space in which the ethnic and cultural diversity of the Jewish people is not brandished defensively when perennial issues of privilege arise, but rather it's a space where diversity is embodied through opportunities for leadership, education, and the preservation and dissemination of traditional Jewish cultures, and the new music that springs up in its wake that is inspired by this diverse culture that we possess. The somewhat exclusionary nature of mainstream Jewish communal formation is given a rest for once. It's a place where people of different races, ethnicities, sexual orientations, and gender expressions are encouraged to voice their connection to this radical act of being Jewish in the world.
So I have like a little question, which is, I think earlier, Margot, you said something early in our conversation. You said we sing the old songs of our people, and I was wondering whether it's just about old songs, but from a diverse array of backgrounds, or is it also new songs? Why shouldn't it be new songs?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I feel like Let My People Sing has been such a beautiful space where people get to like bring and share their music. And then it's so fun to hear it like spread all over. And we can teach you one of those songs if you want. And
teach us. And the us is all of our listeners
Yes. Spread
all around the globe, by the way. They're all of you listening, you're going to sing along.
Oh, wow. So this song is called Little Song and it's by Sol Weiss. And I'm going to teach it line by line. And you're going to repeat back after me.
Beautiful. It's really helpful to have had that, because the question that I had in my mind to ask you was like, okay, you've described the gathering of Let My People Sing, when everybody comes to the place together and for 4 days and learns these songs and teaches these songs. And then you talked about, and then they take them back to where they go. And my question was kind of like, what do you think that the Jewish world could look like if they did that? Or maybe it already is happening. And part of me was thinking like, okay, we're experiencing it, that there would be podcasts where you would be able to just experience Jewish singing. What is the more local version of Let My People Sing? The more small group version? What does all that look like presently or in your fantasies?
So Let My People Sing is in this really special moment right now of scaling up after 7 years of being pretty scrappy and really focusing on one annual retreat and some SoundCloud playlists. And we did some virtual offerings. And also way back when we pulled off some city-based Shabbaton. Now we're in this moment of like scaling up and trying to intentionally grow. So our big offering this year is going to be the summer retreat back at Isabella Friedman Jewish Retreat Center. And then we're in this big question of what's next. And as we build more capacity and build up our staffing. What kind of offerings can we offer at the local level, and also like more broadly to our community that's more accessible than a once a year retreat, which can only fit so many people, and not everybody can go to something like that. So in terms of like what we imagine, part of what is so magical about Jewish tradition is it has so many structures for singing together. There's like praying 3 times a day, which you're supposed to do in community. There's Shabbos songs that are sung after each meal. There's just so many ways to come together around song. And I think one of my dreams is that we re-enliven those and spread the structure that's already there, that we like bring that alive so that it's like a common thing that in places all over the diaspora that you can find people singing together. It's Mirot on a Friday night, or you can find people like songfully davening shacharit in the morning, or, you know. So I think those are part of our dreams, and like how we help make that happen is very unclear, and we're excited as we expand our team to get to imagine together ways we can live into those visions.
I also think that part of the beauty and power and magic of cultural work is that sometimes the way that it looks on the ground coming home locally is the smallest and most profound change in an individual. And that happening over and over again, over time, the healing, the releasing of bounds that we are doing with the work of singing, really resourcing our people to be able to be more fully in the practice of Jewish communal singing in their lives. And that might manifest in people feeling inspired and empowered to be able to hold that space where they are, or teach their friend a song, or just like take the risk of singing a little bit louder with a little bit more intention in synagogue. And then the person next to them feels a little bit more empowered to sing a little bit stronger because they are sitting next to them. That's the kind of change that we see and that we want to keep seeding and growing.
So that's really powerful. And because we started with Let My People Sing, connecting to Let My People Go, and also because we're in the section of the Torah that's the Exodus narrative, I'm clearly thinking about like Passover and Exodus stories. I'm thinking of Dayenu, the framework of like, you know, it would be enough if we achieved X, but what if we achieved Y too? Like from my perspective, y'all just brought some powerful, powerful words about how Let My People Sing can transform Jewish communities and Jewish individuals in their practices that already exist, right? Like people who might experience synagogue one way, taking it to a new level. If that's what Let My People Sing achieves, like Dayenu, I actually think it achieves a lot more, because I've seen, even in the last, you mentioned 7 years, I have been in Jewish contexts and broader contexts that aren't just Jews, but that include a meaningful number of Jews, where, like a conference or a protest, something that's not a Shabbat service. I've seen more and more that there are intentional efforts to bring in collective experiences of singing into moments that in the past we would have seen as like, oh, that's a conference. That's for like panels. That's not for singing. We sing at, the service. Protests historically have had lots of songs. That's not news. But I do think that the way that those have looked, first, I mean, I'm flashing to a moment where I was at a protest in Boston, and I think, Batya, you were leading beautifully in some downtown office occupying space and singing all these Jewish melodies. Like, I don't know, part of what I love about Let My People Sing is the ways in which I think it is causing people to bring Jewish song places where we don't expect it. And so as a closing note, I would love to hear from the three of you about where can we push ourselves to find song where it hasn't been yet? I'm thinking of Genesis, like where Jacob has that moment of like, this place was holy all along and I didn't even know it. Like, where are the songful places that have songs all along that haven't been actualized in collective singing? What does that element of the take it home, bring it to your community work look like?
I think it speaks to the power of singing and collective singing and communal singing that Jews have sung together for a really long time, a really, really long time. In every time we've been exiled, there's these texts where we hung up our harps on the banks of the river in Babylon, but we have kept our music and our singing, and that is a superpower. It's a thing that we are really, really practiced at, and I think it's potentially part of our contribution to the spaces that we exist in, and to the spaces that we are doing liberation work, to the spaces where we are in relationship and communities that we're a part of that aren't just the Jewish community. It feels like an act of being more fully in active practice of our own culture and being able to be that into the world wherever we go.
I'm going to go back to Buber. When one is singing and cannot lift their voice, and another comes and sings with them, another who can lift their voice, the first will be able to lift their voice too. That is the secret of the bond between spirits. It doesn't necessarily say when one Jew is singing and cannot lift their voice and another Jew comes along and sings with them. This could literally be anyone whose voice needs to be strengthened by having another person come and sing with them. What possibilities that singing together creates is the possibility of achdus, einigkeit, of solidarity. Solidarity can be built around the act of singing together, and that can be solidarity with all different kinds of people working towards a melody, but also working towards justice.
Yeah, in terms of like bringing Jewish communal singing to other parts of Jewish life, what comes to mind is just thinking about like a prayer space. And like we said, sometimes that can be songful and sometimes it feels more like rote or more like, okay, we're just going through the things. And just the way a prayer space can be completely transformed when we bring songfulness to it. And feels like a really particular way that I've learned to like share songs in Jewish community. And it's not just done in Let My People Sing, but I see it across. There's like a certain way that we sing together that's spacious, that's collectively oriented, that just feels different. And I think there's something powerful for me about seeing myself and seeing others like getting to bring that and share that with other communities, and the way that allows for connection and allows to be like seen as a Jew. And in this day and age, that's like a, vulnerable and powerful way to be.
Thank you so much, all three of you. This has been a fantastic conversation, and not just conversation because we sang together too, but thank you so much for joining us. This has been awesome.
Thank you so much for having us.
And thanks so much to all of you out there for listening. We hope you've enjoyed this conversation, and we hope that you'll tune in again in the future. We specifically want to remind you that this spirituality series continues. We've got a bunch more episodes coming your way. They're going to be really awesome. So if you have enjoyed our episodes so far about spirituality, we've got many more coming your way that you will also really enjoy. So stay tuned the next few weeks. On this episode's front specifically, you can head to letmypeoplesing.org to learn more about Let My People Sing, and definitely check out the show notes for this episode because it will include some links so you can find out more about their work, and also specifically if you want to learn how to apply for this summer's retreat, the Let My People Sing retreat. So definitely head to judaismunbound.com/podcast. That's where you find our show notes, and click on the link for this episode. So we're going to close out in the same way that we always do, by encouraging you to be in touch with us, and there are a wide variety of ways for you to do that. First, you can head to our Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram feeds. All of those are at Judaism Unbound for our handles. Second, you can go to our website, as mentioned, check out the show notes for this episode, check out other things about us, Judaism Unbound, about our Anya Shiva, the Digital Center for Jewish Learning and Unlearning, many, many, many wonderful things on the website. And you can always email us at dan@judaismunbound.com or lex@judaismunbound.com with any questions, thoughts, visions, ideas, experiments that you're up to Jewishly. All of that is great. Send it to us at dan@judaismunbound.com or lex@judaismunbound.com. The last request that we would make is that we're deeply appreciative if you are interested in supporting us financially on either a monthly recurring basis or just as a one-time gift. You can do either of those via judaismunbound.com/donate. So thanks so much for listening. And with that, this has been Judaism Unbound.